Theo.
Hey, Theo.
Hey there, monster maniacs. It's Heidi from Channeling Spirits. We are on part 3 as we break down each episode of The Haunting of Hill House. A quick heads up, we will be spoiling this episode and the series. Still looking to stay? We warned you. The third episode revolves around the third oldest of the Crain children, Theo. It begins with a flashback of young Theo, played by the incredible McKenna Grace. Her bedroom door mysteriously opens and the camera pans to her bed. A ghostly hand drapes over her arm, just like Hugh in the first episode. Theo mistakes it as her sister.
Are you Nellie?
When the hand squeezes too tight, Theo turns to see no one is there, despite knowing something touched her.
God, don't touch me!
Touch is the name of the episode, which we will find has multiple meanings. The first episode was about sight or lack thereof. The second was about hearing or hearing what we want, while the third episode is about touch or the refusal to do so.
No hug?
The title card reads yesterday, making it October 28th, 2018, since most of episode 2 happened on the 29th. A young girl named Kelsey is looking at a dollhouse. This is the second time we see a miniature home in the series, but Kelsey isn't playing with this dollhouse. She takes dolls of a young girl and an older man, referring to him as
Mr. Smiley.
Descent is a motif throughout the episode as Kelsey walks her doll down the stairs. Later, a young Luke will descend in a dumbwaiter and Theo will descend the stairs Kelsey is describing. Theo is metaphorically descending into Kelsey's subconsciousness, trying to understand why she is misbehaving.
We'll get to the bottom of it.
Kelsey explains,
But then I heard a creak. The stairs, the third step from the top. It makes a sound.
Theo is also a third step from the top in her own family. Speaking of threes, this is the third time we see Theo without her gloves on.
What's that about?
Which is both an indication of her being emotionally vulnerable, but also how she psychically connects with others. This ability is called psychometry and is explored later in the episode. Theo tells Kelsey how she walled herself off as a response to her trauma.
But when I was scared, I would imagine myself building a big wall all around me made of the strongest bricks in the whole world.
Theo's walls have been both literal and metaphorical.
Maybe a brick wall when it comes to Luke.
Much of Theo's body language is closed off, and even after an intimate night, she immediately ends their relationship. Each of the Crain children responded to the trauma differently. Stephen became a record keeper, Shirley a fixer, and Theo describes herself as a builder.
We're great builders.
A task associated with one's hands. We see her gloves back on when shaking hands with the foster parents, but off again when she is alone. She literally puts toys in a box, similar to how she metaphorically compartmentalizes her trauma. This transitions to putting items in a box in the past, but she stops when she senses one box is special.
How did you know that?
Young Theo passes by a statue of Leda and the Swan, a myth about Zeus surreptitiously raping Leda as a bird. This will not be the only rape Theo stumbles upon. Like Descent, penetration is another motif. While Hugh aggressively penetrated the wine box to open it, Theo was able to passively know the contents. He even uses a phallic symbol, a screwdriver, to force it open. Olivia stops her daughter to ask about a cold spot, and Theo replies,
This whole house is cold.
The Crain children all display degrees of extrasensory perception, like their mother. Shirley hears things.
I didn't hear it. I don't...
It was so loud, how could you not hear it?
Theo feels things.
You sure? I don't feel it here.
And later, Luke smells things.
Ugh, what is that smell?
What smell?
We transition from a door opening in the past to the fridge in the present. I love that. Theo is at home having lunch before taking a bite of an apple to return to the past. The Hill family succumb to the madness of the house. We have yet to see if the apple of the Crain children will fall far from that tree. She finds the twins and we see our first hidden ghost of the episode, but it won't be the last. Luke and Theo leave Nellie behind, a fate which we have already seen. While Theo struggles to understand her psychometry, we transition between Nellie's hello to another.
Hello.
As an adult, she has mastered this ability and makes a quick diagnosis after shaking the hand of a young boy. Like the toys, she files away her notes, once again literally compartmentalizing. But despite her psychological defense mechanism, Hill House continues to haunt her. From paperback to manuscript, we travel back to 2012. The siblings debate on what to do with Stephen's royalties, and we get a glimpse into how they viewed their time in Hill House. We know the oldest siblings are skeptics.
I mean, if you actually saw your husband hanging upside down over your bed, you'd see more than I ever have.
There's no such thing as ghosts, and you know that.
While the youngest were believers.
I've heard Luke and Nellie's ghost stories. No offense, Nellie.
Okay.
But even with her abilities, Theo doesn't believe.
They were all in my head. I just didn't know that yet.
Theo ends saying,
Maybe I'll just wait for the paperback.
which is exactly what she did. We find a young Theo dancing in the red room,
Dancing in the red room.
and the doorknob jiggles. We realize this was the other side of the door that Shirley and Nellie were trying to enter in episode 1, another attempt at penetration. We also see the lion's mouth is closed as it is chewing the current occupant. Theo crouches down, descending to investigate, and then resumes dancing. We transition to an adult Theodora who is dancing and sees Trish, her one-night stand from the previous evening. By drinking water, we transition back into the past and find Mrs. Dudley grabbing Luke. Theo tells her not to touch him.
Your little brother was getting into
Want
trouble.
to let go of his arm?
She warns that the dumbwaiter is dangerous, and later we will see how right she is. Theo opens the fridge for the second time this episode and finds Luke playing in the dumbwaiter. Once again, Luke is begging and bargaining his sibling to help.
Please, Theo.
Luke believes he is going up, but then descends. Like Mr. Smiley, Luke is in the basement of the house. We see a phantom hand emerge from behind a barrel, similar to the hand that grabbed Theo in the beginning. When he's rescued, Luke screams,
Sorry, Grammy.
The younger Theo goes to sleep scared, laying on her side while we see an adult Theo in the same way. Her bed sheets, a cloth barrier like her gloves, are pulled from her as Mr. Smiley penetrates her dreams.
You really got my head, girl.
Theo's waking coincides with the other siblings waking to Nell's death, and Shirley about to tell her. We hear 3 knocks. As the news travels from oldest to youngest, as Stephen tells Shirley, and Shirley tells Theo. Shirley says,
It's... No.
and we see her on her wedding day 2 years ago. In a different sort of descent, we find Theo has been going down on a bridesmaid behind closed doors. Naughty. In the present, we learn one reason Shirley is honest with kids about Nell's suicide is because of Theo's insistence.
Yes, that's better than lying. Saying nothing like Dad did.
As we mentioned before, the 5 children each represent one of the Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief. Theo is anger.
Why are you banging on the wall?
Because I'm fucking angry.
Theo has bottled up a lot of emotions and is literally holding an uncapped bottle. While adult Theo insists on telling the truth, a young Luke is lamenting.
Nobody ever believes me.
But Luke is right about Abigail being real and that there is a basement despite it not being on the blueprints. By touching his hand, Theo realizes he's telling the truth and descends through a secret entrance to prove it. As she opens one door, another opens in the future. Once again, she is looking to prove the truth in the basement.
Would you mind if I took a quick look down in your basement?
As Theo sinks into the couch, a realization also sinks in. Pareidolia is the human tendency to see faces in inanimate objects. Just like young Shirley, Kelsey found a terrifying face in an everyday object. Like Hill House, both basements have monsters, one a phantom and the other a foster father. We see several smiley faces in this episode, but a smiling face is also the facade we put on after trauma.
Just a big smile. Too big. He's always smiling, but he isn't happy.
As she shakes the foster father's hand, Theo's smile fades as she knows the truth. Shortly after, we learn how she got her gloves. Olivia calls over her daughter to explain that both she and her mother were
sensitive,
as are her children. To help protect her, Olivia gives Theo her first pair of gloves. Without her mother to guide her, Theo's wall grew impenetrable. She descends down into the morgue to Nell's body to understand her death.
Is that you, Nellie?
Looking to connect, Theo finally calls Trish over. Ironically, Trish puts up her own wall with Theo.
Can we take a second and talk?
Theo recounts her day with Kelsey, saying,
She just needed help, and no one was listening.
Nobody ever believes me.
While the episode began with an uninvited guest slipping into Theo's bed, it ends with an invited guest, one looking to comfort her. In the epilogue, we get one final descent as Theo walks down the grand staircase. Hugh instructs her,
I need you to get Luke and Nell to the car. You get in, lock the doors. Don't unlock them till you see me come outside. Do you understand?
For several years, Theo never unlocked those doors for Hugh. She screams, "Don't touch me!" Which transitions to,
Touch me.
God, this show's so good. If you enjoyed this video and think we deserve it,
That's really scary.
please subscribe. If you are in the position to help, please support us on Patreon and keep coming back for more spooktacular videos. 'Tis the season. I'm Heidi with Channeling Spirits, and thanks for watching. I know I've said it before, but seriously, watch the show. It's my favorite show. The end.